What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another What's Cooking. Today we got something a little different, something new for SCHEELS. Is we're cooking pizza on an Ooni oven. To me, pizza is kind of at the core of who I am. I love making pizza. I've had an Ooni for about 9 months now, and I've made countless styles of pizza from Neapolitan to New York. I'm not going to touch anything with deep dish because that's just not for me. But this is kind of my take on that Chicago-style thin crust pizza. It's nice and flat, not a lot of air pockets, nice crispy crust. And of course, we gotta cut it tavern style into squares. Don't try to change my mind on cutting it into slices. This thing's gonna look good. Let's get to making this easy dough. For this recipe, we're gonna make two 14-inch crusts. And to start it off, we're gonna use 300 grams of lukewarm water, and we can pour that right into our mixer. After that, we can measure out our yeast. And for yeast, we're gonna be using 12 grams of instant yeast. After the yeast, we can measure up our salt, and that is going to be 16 grams of salt. Once we get that dumped into the mixer, we can go on to our flour, and we're going to be using 500 grams of all-purpose flour. You definitely can use bread flour, but I prefer to use all-purpose flour because it's going to get a little bit crispier of a crust in comparison to that bread flour. We can dump that into our mixer and move on to measuring out our sugar. We're going to be using 5 grams of sugar, just to add a little bit more flavor and some sweetness to that crust, and also a little bit more crunch. I'm also going to measure out 20 grams of oil, but first I'm going to mix up the dough before I add in the oil. And I do that because water and oil do not mix. So when you put that oil with the water and then mix the dough, it just doesn't really come out with the consistency I'm looking for. So make sure you are mixing up that dough before you add that oil. We're gonna mix this for 5 to 10 minutes till we get a good dough ball. And once we get a good dough ball, what I like to do is stop, and then I like to knead it by hand to get a real good feel for this dough. So I'm gonna pull this dough off the dough hook. I got a lightly floured surface on my cutting board, and I'm gonna slap this thing on there, and we're gonna knead it out just for a little bit to get a good feel for it and knead it into a nice, well-shaped ball. So this is just my style of kneading. Something I really enjoy to do, and it's probably my favorite part of the process. So we're gonna knead this thing up, get it into a nice ball, and then get a measurement on it, and then cut it in half and have 2 evenly weighed dough balls. And from there, once we get these all cut up and even, I'm gonna roll them into nicely shaped balls, and making sure there's no place for air to get underneath, just by tucking the edges like that, nice and smooth on the sides. And then we're gonna use this Drip Easy barbecue prep tub, slap some oil in it, throw in our dough balls, and let it sit for that 3 hours. After the 3 hours, we can go ahead and start getting our Ooni prepared. Dump it into some of this Jealous Devil charcoal, throw a fire starter in there, light it up, open up all the vents on the Ooni. Simple as that. Just walk away and we can go start prepping our dough. All right, next I'm going to lightly flour our surface, slap our dough ball down, and you can see it's about doubled in size, and there's just a little bit of air in there. And so I'm gonna start from the middle out, pushing that air out of the crust, and then I'm gonna knead it with my hands, letting gravity do the work, just kind of stretching it as I go until we get to about 16 inches. If doing it by hand seems a little too stressful for you, definitely don't be afraid to grab that rolling pin. This is actually my preferred method. I feel like it gets all the air out of this dough and then leads to a much crispier crust in the end. So I'm gonna kind of finesse this thing a little bit, make sure we're to that 16-inch mark, make sure we're in a nice good circle here, and then I'm gonna do one of the things that I do with all my pizza crusts, is I'm gonna fold over the edges, just kind of tucking over my finger, and this just kind of pretties up the pizza dough. Make sure I have a nice even circle, and just looks really good going into the oven, and looks even better coming out nice and crispy when we pull it out of the Ooni. Once we get the pizza looking good, we're gonna go ahead and start grating some fresh mozzarella, slice our red onion in half, and then we're gonna cut just a few strips and put that in the bowl. We're not gonna use a ton of these, so you definitely don't need to use the whole onion. We're gonna lay down some Spiceology pizza seasoning. I grabbed some Urban Slicer pizza sauce. This stuff is super good. I was actually really impressed with it. I usually really like homemaking my pizza sauce, but honestly this Urban Slicer pizza sauce was really good, and it's really easy to just run out of the store and grab yourself a couple cans. After we get the sauce laid down, I'm gonna throw down the pork from our pulled pork recipe that we released last week, and then I'm gonna slap on some red onions on top of that. After the red onions are down, I'm just gonna sprinkle on some garlic salt here just for some added saltiness, and then I'm gonna layer on some cheese, making sure I don't over cheese it, which is hard for me because I love cheese, but if we get this pizza too heavy, it's gonna be really hard to get in and out of the uni, and it might not cook properly. After we got this pizza topped up, we are going to check the deck temp of our uni. I like to shoot for 750 degrees, and when I'm at that mark, I will shut the 2 vents on the uni and launch the pizza. The reason we are shutting the 2 vents is to drop the flame, but still retain the heat in the oven. And I'm going to be turning this pizza every 45 seconds to a minute, making sure we are not burning the crust, but just getting them golden brown. I'm gonna try to keep the pizza as far away from the back of the uni as possible so we can get the longest cook time to really crisp up that crust. This pizza looks phenomenal, and I can't wait to get a bite of that. But first, we need to layer on some of my favorite barbecue sauce again. That Beer's Black Dog, we'll crosshatch that to make it look pretty. And then the secret ingredient, fried onions, slap those things on the top. Honestly, they don't sound like they'd be great on pizza, but they go so well with this pizza, and it's one of my favorite things, and everyone always says that the fried onions were the best part of this pizza. All right, we just pulled this thing off the uni. We topped it with some fried onions, some Beer's Black Dog. Let's cut into it. Let us know if you guys enjoyed seeing a pizza recipe from us, because I'm excited to get into this. Like I said, I cut it tavern style, squares. It's the only way to do it. Like crunch. This pizza is looking way too good to eat, but you know what? I'll take one for the team. You got to start with a crust piece. As always, we got a little bit of pork, a little bit of onion, that barbecue sauce. It's perfect. See, we got nice char on the bottom. Cheese was nice and bubbly. I mean, you can't beat pizza on the uni. Make sure you guys are subscribing to us. Comment below what you want to see us cook. Comment below if you want to see us cook a different style of pizza, but I sure had fun making some pizza, so that's it, and we'll see you next time.